All right, today we're jumping into something really cool called meta prompting. The idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. What if we could use AI to help us write better prompts for AI? It's a bit of a mind bender, right? So let's dive in and see how it works. Okay, so if you're a creator, an engineer, anyone who has to make something from scratch, you know that feeling, right? Just staring at a blank page. And as Dan Clary from Prompt Hub says here, this is where large language models, LLMs, first became a total game changer. They could take just a tiny spark of an idea and spit out a whole outline in seconds, completely smashing through that creative block. And that brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about today. See, LLMs are amazing at following our instructions. But what about writing the instruction itself? Crafting that perfect prompt? Well, that can be its own blank page problem, can it? So here's the big question. Can we actually turn the AI's power back on itself to solve this? And the answer, of course, is a big yes. That's exactly what meta prompting is all about. So here's what we've got on tap. We'll start with that blank page problem, define what meta prompting is, and then get into the core refinement loop. From there, we'll check out a few different techniques, look at some tools for the job, and wrap up with what this all means for you and your new AI copilot. Okay, first up, the blank page problem. Let's really dig into why writing a good prompt is, so darn difficult to begin with. You have to understand, crafting a great prompt isn't just about writing a sentence. It's a full-on engineering discipline. For one, it needs deep domain knowledge. I saw this great comment from a prompt engineer online who said, "Look, I can write amazing screenwriting prompts all day long, but ask me to create one for mechanical engineering, I'd be totally lost." And that's just the start. It's this constant cycle of trial and error, trying to get results that are consistent and predictable, all while juggling this delicate balance between being super specific and, leaving enough room for a little flexibility. It's tough. So if doing all this by hand is such a headache, how do we make it better? How do we make it more effective? Well, that leads us right to the solution, meta prompting. Okay, so what is it really? At its core, meta prompting just means you're using an LLM as your co-pilot for creating prompts. Instead of you grinding it out from scratch, the AI becomes this active partner in the whole process. It's helping you brainstorm ideas, it's helping you refine your instructions, it's optimizing the entire prompt to get the best possible result. It's a totally different way of thinking about it. And this comparison really shows you the difference. The old way, you're crafting everything by hand, hoping for the best, tweaking and repeating. But with meta prompting, it's this AI-assisted iterative loop. And what I think is really a game changer here is that it moves beyond just the content. It's structure-oriented. It helps you design the actual logic and the format of the prompt, which is how you get those super consistent, high-quality results. So how does this whole systematic process actually work? Let's pop the hood and look at the engine that drives pretty much all of these techniques. It's called the core refinement loop. And it's this really elegant, simple three-step cycle. Step 1, generate. The LLM creates a few possible prompts for whatever you're trying to do. Step 2, evaluate. You take those prompts, get some outputs, and then score them for quality. This could be you, another AI, whatever. And finally, step 3, refine. Based on those scores, the LLM learns what worked and what didn't, and it refines the original prompt. And you just repeat. The loop can go on, and the prompt gets sharper and more effective every single time. Okay, so that loop is basically the blueprint, but there are a bunch of different ways to actually build with it. So let's take a quick tour of a few of the most interesting techniques you'll see out in the wild. First up, we have a real powerhouse. It was developed by folks at Stanford and OpenAI, and it's actually just called meta prompting. The best way to think about this one, imagine an LLM acting like the conductor of an orchestra. So here's the deal. A main conductor, LLM, gets a really big, complex task. But it doesn't try to solve it all by itself. No way. Instead, its job is to break that problem down into smaller pieces. Then, it assigns each of those little subtasks to a different, specialized expert LLM, kind of like different sections of the orchestra. The conductor manages all the communication, pulls all their work together, and then synthesizes it all into one final polished answer. The upside here is huge. This approach is super versatile and can tackle some seriously complex problems. And you don't even need a bunch of test data to get started. But there's always a but, right? As you can probably guess, having all those LLMs talking to each other can get expensive and, well, a little slow. And it definitely takes a more complex setup to get it all working. All right, let's switch gears completely to a totally different flavor. This is called conversational prompt engineering, or CPE. And if that conductor method was like a big, formal orchestra, think of CPE as more like a friendly, collaborative workshop. This one is way more intuitive. It all just happens in a chat window. You start by just talking to the AI, describing what you need, and the AI acts like a consultant, asking you questions to really pin down what a good output looks like for you. After that conversation, it spits out an initial prompt. You can then go test it, see what you get, and then just go back to the chat and give more feedback to make it even better. So the big win here, it's super user-friendly. You don't need to be a programmer to work with the AI and end up with a really solid, high-quality prompt. The only catch is that all that back and forth, it can take a while. It really depends on you giving a few rounds of feedback to get it just right. Okay, last one. Let's look at a more advanced technique called text grad. The way I think of this one is like having an AI critic in the room, someone who gives you really specific feedback to help you improve. So here's how it works. You start with a prompt, and it generates an output. Then a second LLM, or a person, comes in and acts as that critic. It looks at the output and gives feedback in just plain English. You know, stuff like, the tone here feels a little flat. Now, this feedback is called a textual gradient. It's a fancy term, but it's basically just a set of instructions that tells another LLM how to revise the original prompt. It's a really smart way to use written feedback to make things better. Okay, so these techniques are obviously super powerful, but the good news is you don't have to build all this stuff from scratch. Let's look at a few tools that put meta prompting right at your fingertips. Here are 3 great ones to check out. You've got Prompt Hub, which can create prompts specifically for different models. Anthropic has a really powerful one built right into its developer console, and OpenAI just put one in their playground that's perfect for creating those big system prompts. Honestly, all of these are fantastic places to start if you want to play around with this stuff. All right, so let's pull back and look at the big picture as we wrap this up. What does all of this really mean for how we work with AI? And here's the key thing to take away. Meta prompting isn't just about getting a better answer. It's about fundamentally changing the relationship. The LLM stops being just a tool that you give orders to and becomes a true co-pilot, an active collaborator that helps you think better, sharpen your ideas, and even figure out what you're trying to achieve in the first place. And that leaves us with a pretty deep question to chew on, right? We started this whole thing by saying that great prompting requires serious domain expertise. But if an AI can help us craft better questions and even structure our thinking, what does that mean for the very idea of expertise in the future? It really points to a future where our own creativity and intelligence could be amplified in ways we're just beginning to imagine. Thanks for tuning in.